Intelligence, education, universal knowledge, and how to get it. You must never stop learning. The world's greatest men and women were people who educated themselves outside of the university with all the knowledge that the university gives. And you have the opportunity of doing the same thing the university student does. Read and study. One must never stop reading. Read everything that you can read that is of standard knowledge. Don't waste time reading trashy literature. This is to say, don't pay any attention to the 10-cent novels, Wild West stories, and cheap sentimental books, but where there is a good plot and a good story in the form of a novel, read it. It is necessary to read it for the purpose of getting information on human nature. The idea is that personal experience is not enough for a human to get all the useful knowledge of life, because the individual life is too short, so we must feed on the experience of others. The literature we read should include the biography and autobiography of men and women who have accomplished greatness in that particular line. Whenever you can buy these books and own them, and whilst you are reading them, make pencil or pen notes of the striking sentences and paragraphs that you should like to remember, so that when you have to refer to the book for any thought that you would like to refresh your mind on, you will not have to read over the whole book. You should also read the best poetry for inspiration. The standard poets have always been the most inspirational creators. From a good line of poetry, you may get the inspiration for the career of a lifetime. Many a great man and woman was first inspired by some attractive line or verse of poetry. There are good poets and bad poets, just like there are good novels and bad novels. Always select the best poets for your inspirational urge. Read history incessantly until you master it. This means your own national history, the history of the world, social history, industrial history, and the history of the different sciences, but primarily the history of man. If you do not know what went on before you came here and what is happening at the time you live, but away from you, you will not know the world and will be ignorant of the world and mankind. You can only make the best out of life by knowing and understanding it. To know, you must fall back on the intelligence of others who came before you and have left their records behind. To be able to read intelligently, you must first be able to master the language of your country. To do this, you must be well acquainted with its grammar and the science of it. Every 6 months you should read over again the science of the language that you speak, so as not to forget its rules. People judge you by your writing and your speech. If you write badly and incorrectly, they become prejudiced towards your intelligence, and if you speak badly and incorrectly, those who hear you become disgusted and will not pay much attention to you, but in their hearts laugh after you. A leader who is to teach men and present any fact of truth to man must first be learned in his subject. Never write or speak on a subject you know nothing about, for there is always somebody who knows that particular subject to laugh at you or to ask you embarrassing questions that may make others laugh at you. You can know about any subject under the sun by reading about it. If you cannot buy the books outright and own them, go to your public circulating library in your district or town, so as to get the use of those books. You should do that as you may refer to them for information. You should read at least 4 hours a day. The best time to read is in the evening after you have retired from your work and after you have rested and before sleeping hours, but do so before morning, so that during your sleeping hours what you have read may become subconscious, that is to say, planted in your memory. Never go to bed without doing some reading. Never keep the constant company of anybody who doesn't know as much as you or is as educated as you, and from whom you cannot learn something or reciprocate your learning, especially if that person is illiterate or ignorant, because constant association with such a person will unconsciously cause you to drift into the peculiar culture or ignorance of that person. Always try to associate with people from whom you can learn something. Contact with cultured persons and with books is the best companionship you can have and keep. By reading good books, you keep the company of the authors of the books or the subjects of the book, when otherwise you could not meet them in the social contact of life. Never go down in intelligence to those who are below you, but if possible, help to lift them up to you, and always try to ascend to those who are above you, and be their equal with the hope of being their master. Continue always in the application of the things you desire educationally, culturally, or otherwise, and never give up until you reach the objective, and you can reach the objective if others have done so before you, proving by their doing it that it is possible. If you desire to accomplish greatness, you must first decide in your own mind in what direction you desire to seek that greatness. And when you have so decided in your
Hello, greetings, Aquaba. Happy day to you. We hope that you are at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And if not, are rapidly approaching that realm. And we are so excited that you have decided to join us for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We thank you for joining us today for our topic, the lost and found Jesus Christ, as we move into the week that the majority of people on earth celebrate as the birth of Christ, or what's known as Christmas. We want to have a foundational discussion today about what all that really means, really in the context of as I was growing up around this time of year, the pastors in the churches I was forced to attend always referred to this season as Jesus being the reason for the season. And what we want to discuss today is that Jesus really has nothing to do with this capitalist Christmas season all over the earth today. And what really the season represents is the desire on behalf of corporate interests, those that profit off of people buying, consuming, that they have the opportunity to ensure that your money leaves your hands and goes into their hands. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We give honor and respect to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the true caretakers of this land, the people who continue to fight for their just self-determination. And we give honor and respect to our African ancestors, and that's what they are, African and ancestors. They are the sole reason that we are here. They are the ones who fought and who sacrificed so that we would have the opportunity to live and exist. I saw a statement by somebody in the faith community, and they were talking about how you couldn't pay the price, but Jesus paid the price. And I've heard that my entire life, and it always befuddles me because we have so many of our ancestors who paid the price, so many who did it just as magnificently as Jesus did it. They sacrificed their life because of their ongoing contributions to the masses of our people for a treasure that they themselves knew they would never have, but that they knew we had to have. So that statement that you could not pay the price, you most certainly could and should pay the price. So we honor our ancestors who paid that price. Although they themselves did not receive the reward, they paid the price. And that's why we honor their sacrifice with the dignity of continuing the struggle that they handed over to us for justice and forward. We are very glad to be able to let you know who we are. And we are, as our ancestors' voices, it's, as I said, a program sponsored weekly by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. And the AAPRP itself is a revolutionary, independent, mass, pan-African political party with its base in Africa. In other words, the work that we're doing is focused around bringing African people or people of African descent, if you will, together on one common course designed to bring us the independence to determine our own destiny, no matter where we live on the planet Earth, what language we speak, what faith we practice or don't practice, or any of those things. That's what Pan Africanism is. That's what it means when we say the definition of it is one unified socialist Africa. We have all kinds of people doing all kinds of great work, but this is the work that we choose to do because we don't have a lot of people doing this type of work. And we are convinced that without this objective being achieved, nothing else we do will ever really seriously address the problems that we face as a people on a collective level. And so our work to achieve Pan-Africanism, if you want to know more, and you should, you can find out more by going to our website, which we'll announce at the end of the program. But also you should pick up this book, The Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare by Kwame Nkrumah. It is really the guide for the work that we do in the APRP, organized around uniting revolutionary Pan-African formations on the ground throughout Africa into one body that we call the All-African Committee for Political Coordination. And that body, once solidified, becomes the actual All-African People's Revolutionary Party, one unified socialist Africa. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week. I'm going on 4 years, about 250 some odd episodes by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter, and we're both active organizers within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And I said 4 years, it's actually been going on 5 years. In March of 2025, it'll be 5 years that we've been doing this program. So we will get started today. I'll start by turning it over to Shakura.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Wow, 5 years. My goodness. Okay. All right. Greetings, everyone. So, we are so excited to bring you this topic today. This continues to be such an important issue, especially when we think about the word faith and we think about how we are socialized under any capitalistic regimes to associate that when we think of faith, we are describing wealth and talking about wealth, making sure that we associate faith with wealth, and also this piece about, how as individuals, our well-being is usually based on us prioritizing our own needs and not taking into account what the collective justice could look like if we were to consider how our efforts could help to change things for numerous people, not just ourselves. This is also this piece where we start to practice what that looks like in terms of understanding that collective justice can help honor all living beings. And that would even include, being beneficial for the planet, helping the planet to have more of a humane approach to how we navigate these things instead of treating the planet like a monetary pimp in terms of the scamming that comes with how we associate faith with wealth. It's also important for us to think about how mega churches basically equal mega pimps. And I think we can even start to break down. You might be wondering, well, why are we saying, pimps and using these terms to describe faith and wealth? Well, we're using these terms to describe that because that's precisely how they are manifested under capitalism. Because you can't have a church that is not intended on using principles under colonialism, white supremacy, Eurocentric values. You're not going to find a situation like that where it's not focused on profit gaining, where it's not focused on exploitation and focused on you feeling like you owe it in terms of showing how devoted you are by giving the biggest tithes that you can give and not forgetting to give tithes, making sure you give them even when you don't have them, even if it means you are taking away from your own familial income, whatever that looks like. If you are a true devoted person to this church, then you should sacrifice every single thing that you have so that the church can survive, even if it means you don't. And I think that that type of training, that type of ideology, that type of teaching, I think it's very abusive. I think it's very capitalistic in nature. I think it's imperialistic in nature. And I think it drives the same ideology that we are trying to eradicate, and that you're focused more on yourself as an individual and you're not really thinking about where these teachings are coming from and more importantly what they're doing to you as a person. So if you're going to this megachurch and this megachurch is teaching you that you should be centering that church above everything else, then that's also going to reinforce this idea that just like the megachurch, you should only be focused on the church and helping it to grow, but then you should be focused on yourself and helping yourself to grow so that you can be better at doing what? Giving back to that church. And in both cases, we're still looking at how the individualism is being reinforced. We're not looking at how you can use your teachings from a faith that is founded and based in collective justice and collective well-being. You could totally use that to advance the people, to advance society, to advance social structures that impair people and make it very difficult for them to live in a world where they matter, where they don't have to question where their next food or meal or drink is going to come from. They don't have to be out and frigid temperatures when it is far too cold for a person to be outside. These are the kind of collective justices that we could start to focus on. And I think one of the biggest things that I've appreciated about being in work study, I'm sure Comrade Ajamu will speak more on this later in the presentation, but one of the biggest things that I've appreciated about being in work study is, as we've said before, work study is a component, an organizing component of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So, in saying that, I understand that I am organizing with the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And one of the main principles that we have come to understand from our Incrumis, Terreus, Cabrales principle ideologies is that there is no such thing as having a religion that is not rooted in revolutionary outcomes, which means as we practice with the AAPRP, you cannot practice revolution and religion and perpetuate, promote, support, endorse capitalism. There's no such thing. It's an oxymoron. You can't have religion that is revolutionary that supports patriarchy. That is impossible. And in my opinion, that's one of the most favoritist things that I love about organizing with this organization is I'm not going to pray to an entity that supports sexism. I'm not going to pray to an entity that supports poverty, that supports malnutrition, that supports dehydration, that supports health disparities. I'm not praying to an entity that supports children being violated, that supports elder abuse. Not me. I'm not praying to that. That's not the entity for me. I would like to pray to an entity that wants to deconstruct all systems of oppression, that wants to deconstruct people living out on the street who are unhoused, and wants to deconstruct people suffering from abuse, suffering from illiteracy, people suffering from poverty. The entity that I'm praying to is terminating all barriers that are making it difficult for people to live a quality life. And more importantly, it is terminating entities that profit off of our pain and suffering. Comrade Ajamu broke that down for me just a couple of weeks ago and kind of informed me, especially in Cuba, I would argue in other socialist countries as well, but especially in Cuba, entities such as tow trucks, for example, do not exist because the whole purpose of tow trucks, the purpose of medical insurance, or even renter's insurance, whatever, the purpose of those entities is to profit off of your harm, off of your sadness, off of your tragedy. That is the whole purpose of those programs and entities. So the entity that I am praying to, I don't think that entity wants those kind of businesses and companies to exist, because that would mean it's okay for us to make money off of people being deeply troubled and sad. And that is not a world where I want to pray to an entity like that. So I think that, we really kind of have to break these things down, you all, because one of the biggest contradictions that I have with a lot of organized religion, which is partly why I keep saying entity and not another word, because I don't really feel comfortable saying another word, because that would mean that I stand with the beliefs of these other organized religions, and I don't. Every single one of them is rooted in patriarchy, every single one of them. And as I just said to you, I'm not getting down with that. I just said that to you. I would have to be a fool to come on this broadcast every Sunday and tell you smash patriarchy. Patriarchy gotta go. Africa for the Africans, and smash patriarchy. And then Sunday morning before the seminar, Sunday night, I'm praying to a God or a Yahweh or a Buddha or whoever, and Allah, whoever, that very much endorses my subservientness and for me to submit to some man. You got to be out of your mind. I am not the one. You got me all the way messed up. So, no, we have to really unpack that, you all. And you should be able to question that. If your entity loves you like you say it does, you should be able to question why it is, in fact, endorsed for people to be treated inhumanely and nobody questions it within your organized religion. You should be able to question that. And your entity should be able to handle you questioning it. The whole purpose of you studying this religion, you studying the spirituality, is for you to grow. But that means that you get to be critical along the way, because if you are in fact being critical, that means you're breaking these pieces down. That means you're thinking about things. That means you're drawing conclusions. You're making connections. That's what all of this is all about. And if you're telling me that you pray to a religion that doesn't allow you to question things, it doesn't allow you to raise questions, it doesn't allow you to think for yourself, then you should seriously consider why you're still praying to that religion. It's basically not allowing you to be yourself. And more importantly, it's not allowing you to grow into the person that you can become, which is a serious, serious thing that you should evaluate. Next slide, please. I just think so much about this particular topic, especially from where the location that I am broadcasting from. Many of you know that I am in the United Snakes of America, and you also know that I am located in the Bible Belt. And so it's super interesting to me, even when we use the term Bible Belt, it describes areas within the mid south or southern region of the US that tend to be extremely driven by religious beliefs. I mean, extremely driven by religious beliefs, but where the overwhelming percentage of people in Tennessee, USA, Mississippi, USA, Alabama, USA, I would say 80% or more of those states are Christian Southern Baptist families. And so when we think about megachurches, I'm always blown away by that, because there are some very big, huge megachurches in the city of Memphis. If I drive 20 minutes to Mississippi, I can find some. There's some in Arkansas. That's what they say down here, is you'll see liquor stores and churches on every corner. So you won't have church deserts and you won't have liquor store deserts, but you better believe there's some food deserts here. You better believe there's some hospital deserts here where you have to drive 45 minutes to the nearest emergency room and pay $1,000 because you couldn't go somewhere closer because your insurance wasn't in the network, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? So that's exactly the contradictions that I think we're raising. And I think if we really start to think about what the religion is supposed to be doing for the community, for the people, again, these religions should be advancing the conditions so that things won't be as hard on people. They shouldn't be taking money from your pocket where you're still struggling to make ends meet. That's not an equitable relationship. And you should be putting in just as much as that religion is giving back to you. I'm talking about spiritual feeding. I'm talking about mental spiritual feeding. I'm talking about physical feeding. I'm talking about all of that. It shouldn't just be, excuse me, where you're investing, but you're not really getting that return on your investment. We can look at the pie chart, excuse me, the bar graph on the slide, and we can look at how Amazon and other corporations that basically equals the big winners at Christmas. Why is that? Well, because every single one of us has our Walmart account, we have our Amazon accounts, we have apps on our phone now. We don't even have to type in www anymore. We could just pull the app up on our smartphone. Some of us, we order so much from there when we are just doing a Google search, it'll link to our accounts and ask us, do you want me to put this in your cart? We don't even have to click the buttons anymore because that's how capitalism works, you all. That's how propaganda works. They track what you're spending and then they make suggestions based on how you're spending it so that they can continue to lock in your money, to lock in your profit, to lock in making sure that you will give them all of your coins every single time. I've given you all examples about this before, but it bears repeating. I remember when I purchased my vehicle, the current vehicle that I'm driving, and it was so interesting to me. They sent me all these emails saying, we're so happy that you are in the Nissan family. We hope that you will continue to use us for all your future vehicle purchases. And I thought to myself, this is how propaganda works. You're trying to get me now because you want to make sure that before I decide, after this vehicle is ready to retire, before I decide to go look at Toyota or before I decide to go look at Subaru, you want to send me as many emails as you can. You're texting me, you're calling me to see how I'm enjoying the new vehicle. You're doing everything you can to lock in my dime. So when the time comes and I do need to retire this vehicle, you would probably prefer that I exchange my vehicle at your lot so that I can literally just keep it in the family and continue to exchange vehicles from you. It would break your heart if I decided to go with a different direction and to go with a different company. But it's no different with other companies. That's precisely what we've been trying to say is they're all in competition because none of them are safe under capitalism, which is why they're trying to lock your dime. If they can guarantee that you will continue to give them all of your money, they might have a chance of surviving. But because they're in competition with all the other make and model vehicle companies out there, they have just as much to lose as they have to gain. It really just depends on the way the market is going. And so this is the same with buying holiday gifts. It's the very same with buying gifts. In a capitalist dominated world, we can think about how profit usually means, and really, when I say usually, it's really always has a mean more for the people. This means that it's going to be a mean more than people in terms of the value being higher, I'm saying. And then also, this means that other entities, such as plants, animals, we could think about the planet. Nothing is sacred because nothing matters as much as making the profit. Not humanity, not plants, not animals, not oxygen. I mean, you if you need oxygen for your tire, you have to pay for that. And I always think about family members who will say to me, we are really in a capitalistic regime when you got to pay for air. And that's the truth. That is the truth. It's really a trip to me. But they will put a sticker, a price on everything. Anything that they can profit off of, they will put a price sticker on it and expect you to pay. My grandmother used to always say, everybody got their hand out. She was not lying when she said that. You know you're getting older when you start citing what older people in your family have been saying for years because they were wise. And you see now why they said what they said. Everybody has their hand out. And she was absolutely right. So this is how we can start to really think about this because if that is the case where value and profit mean more than people's lives, they mean more than plants' lives, they mean more than animals' lives, then that means nothing is sacred. That means nothing is protected under capitalism, which means anything can happen that can continue to devalue those entities while making sure that the profit is still gained by any means necessary. So this is why you're seeing all these commercials. This is why you see, I'm sure you've seen the Walmart commercial where they're allowing you to make deliveries as late as December 24th, and it's guaranteed to arrive by 6 p.m. I mean, how crazy is that? And I'm thinking about the people who are delivering, working on the holiday eve until 6 p.m. because they don't have the opportunity to call in sick. They're trying to make that holiday money too because they have gifts to pay for it too, but they're being worked to the bone because they're trying to squeeze out every little ounce of minutes and hours that they can get from these people so that they can guarantee you get your package on time, and so you don't have to leave the comfort of your domicile. Meanwhile, other people are being exploited in those processes, not just people in the US, people all over the world, because the resources are being stolen to make the products. The resources are not being earned equitably, they're being stolen from that. And so, with that, we just want to close by saying, before I pass it back to Comrade Ajamu, we'll just say if you came in early, you heard the podcast that we were playing. I selected that podcast because it's an audiobook from Marcus Garvey's book, A Message for the People. And I played that particular part of the chapter because he's essentially talking about how we need to raise our political education. If you have Spotify or Amazon, I'm sure you can purchase the book, but you can also listen to it as an audiobook. And as we close out, we're thinking about how, as I close out these slides, we should be thinking about how political education is one of the best ways that we can resist capitalism. Ashe.
Ashe, obrigada, asante sana, midasi. Thank you very much. 2 points I want to make before I move into my piece. On this slide, I'm going to, and hopefully you all can see, but going to what's listed on the screen are the annual profits of Amazon since 2012. In 2012, Amazon had a profit margin of 15 billion. This is in billions, this chart here. And as of 2022, and it's actually higher in 2023 and will be higher in 2024, it went from 15 billion in 2012 to an annual profit of 225 billion in 2022. And it's also worth mentioning, if you didn't know, like Amazon workers are striking right now. They're striking for higher wages and better working conditions and benefits, as they should, as they rightfully deserve. So the example Shakur gave of them guaranteeing delivery of whatever you purchase, you shouldn't be purchasing anything from any company where the workers are on strike. So hopefully none of you are doing that. But these folks that are out here having to deliver, get these packages ready to be loaded on these trucks and deliver, they're short staffed because people are not working. They're out on strike. They're on the picket line. So this is, they don't care about that, obviously, because they're still guaranteed delivery, which means y'all know how that works. That means you have to do even more work than you normally would have to do without getting paid anything else. And so the other thing I wanted to just go back to something Shakur talked about in terms of just contextualizing this question of fair market economy and the question of competition within the capitalist system. Really, there's no such thing as a fair market economy in this society. And by society, I mean all of these, the entire planet, actually, because it's dominated by capitalism, not just the United Snakes of America. There really is no such thing as a free market economy. Because if you think about it, if there was, what that would mean is that if you and I together decided, hey, we have designed a car that we think is as good as a Tesla or a F-150 pickup truck or whatever, and we want to put it on the market, then a free market economy would say that if we had the money to produce the, what do they call them? The industry, I can't remember the word when there's a new vehicle that they want to roll out as a test case. If we have the money to create that vehicle and put it on the market, we would be able to do that because it's a free market economy. But the reality is that you wouldn't be able to do that because the monopoly corporations, the vehicle manufacturing corporations control all of the places where you produce the zinc that makes the aerodynamic design on the vehicles. They control all of the steel. You can't just walk up and say, I'm going to own this land and pull steel from it. They already own all that. It's already taken by them. They own all of the rubber plantations in places like Liberia in West Africa. They own that. Or Ghana. It's not available for you to just walk up and say, I have the money, I'm going to purchase this. They're not going to sell it to you because they want to be able to control the market. They own all the oil refining to be able to put oil in the car, and they also own all the cobalt refining to produce their lithium, rather, to produce the batteries for the electric cars. So there's no free market in that. It's a monopoly capitalist system, and that's important to understand because they will confuse us. And we got people out here running around talking about, if you have the desire, you can be whatever you want to be. You can rise to the top of the capitalist system. That's an out and out lie. In fact, if any of the vehicle manufacturing companies, the major companies, you all know who they are: Ford, Chevrolet, Toyota, Nissan, Honda, et cetera, Subaru, et cetera, so forth. Any of those companies, if they had serious financial turmoil where they were not profitable, the government would have to step in and give them welfare, financial welfare, to save them from failing. Why? Because, and this happened in the 1970s with Chrysler. The government came in and bailed out these bailouts. Same with the banks that happened when Obama was first elected. They bailed out these banks. The reason why this is the case, and that tells you right there, it's not a free market economy. The reason why they have to do that is, if you think about how these industries work in capitalism. You go to Wells Fargo, they have investment products, they have checking, savings accounts, they have money market accounts, they have all of the products that they have. You go to Bank of America, they have the same products. You go to Chase, they have the same products. You go to Toyota, they have a Toyota Corolla. You go to Nissan, they have a Nissan Sentra or whatever it is now. You go to Honda, they have a Honda Civic. All these cars are equitable. They're in the same class. They're all economy cars. So if Honda has a serious financial struggle and they're not able to make any money, then they're going to have to lower the price of their Honda Civic, right? If no one's buying it, they have to lower the price. That's how that works. And if they do that, everybody's going to be buying Honda Civics, which means they're not going to buy Toyota Corollas, and they're going to be buying the Honda Civics at a greatly reduced price. And as a result, that's going to adversely impact the ability of these corporations to make the profitability that they want to make. So there really is no competition between multinational capitalist corporations. I mean, if you want to say that, well, the competition is, we want to make $50 billion in annual profits and not 30 million. We don't want to be the second place company that makes 30 billion. If that's competition to you, that's not really competition to me, because what that tells me is that they are in competition, but not really against each other, but against all of us. That's really who they're in competition against. So this is right in line with the theme that we're talking about when we say that Christmas ain't never really been about Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ, as Shakur mentioned, there's nothing to do with all of this gift giving and profitability and spending money you don't have and then feeling like absolute garbage because you cannot buy all this stuff for the people that you love in your life. That has nothing to do with what is supposed to be the gospel of Jesus Christ. If we believe it, then you know that the human being that walked the earth as Jesus Christ was a person that was focused on being a voice for those who were the voiceless. But we look at the people today that say they follow Christ. Very rarely do you see any of them who participate and represent those values. And I'm not talking about like just doing things to make you feel better about being in a privileged position. Like a lot of people will go out and they'll give clothes to the houseless people, for example, or they'll feed them. And that's great. I'm not trying to take anything away from people that do that. But when people do that, you're not really sacrificing anything other than time and a little bit of money to do that. You're not putting yourself in danger by doing that. What we're talking about when we talk about Jesus Christ, we're talking about someone who put their life in danger by standing up for against rather the forces of injustice. And we're saying that if you really want to be Christ-like in this backward society where everything is about oppressing all of humanity, you cannot just give a little contribution here, there, and do nothing to challenge the status quo. That's not being Christ-like. That's not what that means. So we have to, for those of you who really want to be serious about being Christ-like, that means that Christianity in a capitalist society has to be against maintaining capitalism, because there's no logical argument that can be made that can argue that capitalism itself is a system that advances the majority of people on earth. There's no logical argument that can be made to say that. So since that's true, then if you're a Christian and you are being Christ-like, that would require you to be opposed to the capitalist system. And so if you're not opposed to the capitalist system, you're not being Christ-like. You have a God. It's just not the Jesus Christ of the gospel. It's the capitalist system. That's your God. So Jesus in December, I mean, we know that's a myth anyway. You know, all the biblical scholars and most of the people in the faith who know what they're talking about know Jesus wasn't born on December 25th. And they know that that day was only created by the merchants to ensure that they could have a profitable day at the end of the year to boost their profits. So none of that has anything to do with reality. But the important point, that's a minor point. The important point is we need to have people who are claiming Christ to begin to be more Christ-like. And that means standing up against injustice, putting your body on the line like Jesus Christ did. You cannot claim to love Jesus Christ and you're not willing to do what Jesus Christ told you to do. You know, so these are the things that we have to talk about, because we know Jesus was not a citizen of Rome. And there was a book on the previous slide. I highly recommend it. And I'll go back to it just so you can see the title, The Politics of Jesus Christ by Aubrey Hendricks. You should read that book. It was a great book, because what Hendricks talks about in the book is that Jesus never achieved the status of being a citizen of Rome. And because he didn't have that citizenship, he didn't have the class privileges that came along with that. In other words, his morality was based upon objective analysis of the system he lived in. Whereas a lot of the other people who were talking in the Bible, like Paul, for example, Paul was a citizen of Rome. So just like today, the people who benefit from the capitalist system are always going to be the people who speak out in support of this system. And so Jesus wasn't in that position in Rome. So Jesus talked about the inequities in the society. And that's why he was pursued by the Pharisees and all of these people who wanted to crucify him. And that's why they did crucify him. So any person that's a true Christian today cannot ignore that. You cannot just be, well, when Easter comes, you have Good Friday, and it's just some mystical ghost spookism type of thing where, you know, this man supposedly dies on Friday at noon in the day and then resurrects himself on Sunday, like some spookism, but it has no symbolic relevance to your actual life. You're not interpreting it the way it was meant to be interpreted, that You have to be reborn. We have to be reborn. The cowardly parts of us, the selfish parts of us need to be done away with. And what needs to be resurrected is the courageous, disciplined, and principled part of us that lives on dignity. This is what Jesus Christ represented. So if you're saying that you believe in Christ and you're a Christian and you believe in the gospel and you're not advocating and operating your life based on those principles, then you're not a follower of Jesus Christ. You're just a poor, cowardly piece of shit that wants to use the shield of religion to justify your cowardly lifestyle that is only focused on making sure that you're comfortable, and you might give 2 or 3 hours every once in a while because you feel guilty. You should feel guilty. You should feel so guilty you have a heart attack because you're not following the example of Jesus Christ. And we, those of us who do, make a sincere effort to live our life and sacrifice tremendously because we live based on these principles. We're not going to let you get away with that. You're not going to just get away with that because we know what it looks like to live a life. I don't even follow, I'm not a follower of Jesus Christ, but I certainly understand what it means to live your life based on principle and dignity. And no question at all, I understand the sacrifices you make in this backward ass society when you decide to live your life that way. I have a whole life of sacrifices and wouldn't have it any other way because the whole point of your faith, just like for me, the whole point of my incrumis terreus cabralis revolutionary African personality, the whole point of my ideology is to give me the strength to stand up against these injustices that I face because I dare to speak out and act out against injustice. So by the same way, your faith should give you the same strength to do that. What the hell good is your faith if you're still a coward? It's like Malcolm X said, if it hasn't done any more for you than it has, you shouldn't be talking about it anyway. If you're still a coward, it serves no purpose. It's just spookism. It's just a horror film. That's all it is. It's just some sort of fantasy existence that does nothing to advance the world, the real world that we live in. So any true Christian has to be pro-justice. And by pro-justice, we mean you have to be willing to stand up and take unpopular positions because they're the right position to take. Any so-called Christian that's silent on the question of Palestine is not a Christian. Any so-called Christian that's silent on the question of capitalism and white supremacy and the oppression that is systematically meted out against African people all over the world, against indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, against the people of Asia, against poor European working class people, anybody that is not talking about those things and saying they're Christian is not a Christian. You can light up as many goddamn lights as you want. You can have as high a Christmas tree as you want. That doesn't make you a Christian. You can yell and scream and shout and talk in tongues until you faint. That none of those things make you a Christian. The only thing that makes you a true Christian is being pro-justice. You cannot be pro-war in a society that engages in war to oppress the masses of people on earth. That is an oxymoron. You cannot be pro-poverty or not be anti-poverty. You cannot walk over people who don't have anything and justify it. You cannot be just willing to give a houseless person a meal. You have to be dedicated to eradicating houselessness. That's what a true Christian would be. Jesus Christ wouldn't have just gave somebody a fish sandwich and said, well, I fulfilled my Christian duty. I'm good. Now I can go down and party. I don't even have to think about that person that ate that fish sandwich and has nothing else after that. That's not a Christian. A true Christian is someone that is willing to be uncomfortable in the name of justice, period. If you're not willing to do that, and you call yourself a Christian, you need to stop right now because you are a goddamn liar. You are not a Christian. You are nothing but a selfish person who is only committed to preserving yourself. And I hope that that makes you mad as hell. If that's you, I hope it makes you mad as hell. You should be mad, but who you should be mad at is yourself for living a life of fraud. And it's not entirely your fault. I will say that because this is how religion is practiced in this backward society. We all grew up. I grew up with that model, that wealth and religion are the same thing model, that you operate in church like it's a bank. You go to church every week and you tithe and you give your money. And for that, you should expect a house and a car. I mean, what kind of backward ass shit is that? You know, that's the most primitive analysis of faith that a person could ever articulate. Because Jesus wasn't Jesus wore sandals. He wasn't trying to get no BMW. He wasn't saying that, well, I'm going to stand up and talk about the injustices so that I could get a 5-bedroom house with granite counters. That's not what Jesus was doing. So I could get a Tesla. That wasn't what he was doing. He walked everywhere. He didn't even own a vehicle or the equivalent of a vehicle. He didn't own any of that. He was focused on doing the work of justice. That's what he was focused on doing. So if you're not focused on that, you ain't no Christian. That's all. I mean, it's okay. You can start your own third-party religion. Say, I worship in the church of selfishness and self-preservation. And my God is capitalism. And I pray to capitalism not every Sunday, but every goddamn minute that I'm alive. I pray to capitalism. And I pray that capitalism gives me something, gives me material comfort. And I'm not going to ever do anything to make myself uncomfortable. I'm never going to take a risk. I don't understand what people, if I see somebody beating up, if I see a man beating up a woman on the street, I'm not going to get it. That's not the Christian thing. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do anything to help anybody like that. If I see somebody berating an African woman or an indigenous woman, I'm not going to do that. It has nothing to do with me. I worship in the church of self-preservation. That's what you need to do. If those are the ways that you would react to those types of realities, that's what you need to do. What the hell good is your faith? It doesn't give you any courage. You don't stand up against anything that's not comfortable for you to stand up against. You stand up in cowardly ways. You stand up and you denounce people who don't have the capacity to fight back against you denouncing them. You do that. That's what a coward does. That's not standing in the footsteps of Jesus. You stand there because you want to talk to me or anybody about, there's a question of how you live your life, and morality is just based on your individual things, who you're sleeping with. That's all it is that. And I had the Mormons came here. I can't remember if it was Mormons or Jehovah's Witness or somebody came here, and they were telling me that. And I was telling them, I cut them off. I said, if that's all the God you're talking about is concerned about is who somebody is sleeping with, you're telling me that God is jealous? You're telling me that God is a vengeful God? I mean, that sounds like a lot of the people I grew up in, the neighborhood I grew up with. That doesn't sound like the all-powerful being. I don't want anything to do with nobody like that. If that's your God, send me straight to hell. I don't want anything to do with no entity like that, that's selfish and jealous and vengeful. That sounds like some of the bullies I grew up with. I don't want anything. I'm traumatized by that, growing up under that. Now you want me to dedicate my life to that? I don't want anything to do with that. Nothing whatsoever. And unlike you, I'm not a coward. So I don't mind saying, send me straight to hell. Strike me with lightning. If that's really what it is, if that's what God is, what you're talking about, I don't want anything to do with that. I'll be the only person, or he'd be 25 billion people over on the left side. I'll be the only person on the right side. Because I'm not a hypocrite like you. So this is what has to start being the dialogue around this question, that Christians have to be held accountable to the principles of Jesus Christ. And if they're not doing that, they ain't Christians. Why is that wrong to say that? Because we do that with revolutionaries. I say it all the time. How the hell is somebody a Pan-Africanist? Somebody like this, the Umar Johnson guy, for example. How the hell is he a Pan-Africanist? And he has no organization. I mean, some of you all, like, you look up to people like this. No organization. How are you talking about? And I said this to his face. I was on a panel with him once, and I said this to him because I don't talk about people behind their back. I tell him to his face, what is he going to do? Nothing. He couldn't say nothing when I told him. He's like, well, brother, we're all entitled to it. I'm like, it's not my opinion. It's a fact. You're a scam artist. That's what you are. That's what I told him. And there were witnesses there that heard it. So I don't have to lie about it. I told the man that to his goddamn face. I'd tell him again if he was here right now, because I'd tell anybody like him, because that's the truth, is that you don't have an organization. How the hell are you a Pan-Africanist? Pan-Africanism is about organizing the masses of African people, and you're not even in an organization. So how are you going to do that by yourself? You can't do that by yourself. Nobody can. And then you support capitalism. Pan-Africanism and capitalism cannot even be said in the same sentence. That's a contradiction. Capitalism destroyed our mother Africa. It's the reason why we're scattered and suffering all over the world. It's the reason why we don't control any of our human and material resources. So how the hell can it be the solution to our problem? Anybody that says capitalism in any form is a solution to our problem, that's just somebody trying to make money and trying to couch it in a veneer of doing something for African people. That's all that is. But a lot of us are not that stupid. We can see right through that. And that's what I told them. How can you be a Pan-Africanist and you're pro-patriarchy? You're for the system that exploits women. That's not and marginalized people, and you're homophobic. You will never be able to convince us that you are for Pan-Africanism and you support these kind of backward values. Well, by the same token, we tell people that. By the same token, you'll never be able to convince us that you are a Christian when you support these backward capitalist values. We're not going for that. We sacrifice too much to do what's right, to sit there and listen to you. I won't even listen. If you start talking to me like that, I cut you off and go on. What are you going to do? You can't do nothing, because I know that what I'm saying has the power of truth behind it. And when I know that I have the power of truth behind what I'm saying and doing, I'm not afraid of a goddamn thing. And there's nothing you can do to stop that. That's the most powerful thing on the planet Earth. And it's fueled me my entire life. It's allowed me to stand up to situations that many people would just break apart in fear from. Yes, I'm not saying I'm not afraid. Of course, fear is dialectical. It's a part of life. I'm always afraid that bad things will happen. But the difference is when you live through a life of principles, the fear will never be the dominant factor that dictates how you will proceed. It will never be that. You will learn how to function and work through your fear, because you know that fear cannot define you when you believe in something greater than that. And the only people that won't challenge the fear is because they really don't believe in anything greater than that. Because the church of self-preservation doesn't have the moral fortitude to give you the strength to believe in something greater than fear. So that's why we have to call all of this out for what it is. And we have to do this. We have to say that this is what it is. Because if we don't do that, then we are complicit in this scam that church in this society and the dominant perception of Jesus is a capitalist scam. We have to be willing to say that and engage that and say it clearly so that people understand it and have the knowledge to back it up and say, we're not against Christianity. We're not against Jesus. We're for all of that. We're not against Islam. We're not against Allah. We're not against Judaism. We're not against any form of worship, because we know that worship serves the purpose of making you a better human being. What we're Questioning is, what is the definition of a better human being? A better human being is not someone who's judgmental and self-righteous and thinks they're better than everyone else, that isn't living life the way they perceive life to be lived. That's not what being a better human being is. The only legitimate definition of a better human being has to be someone who places the interests of justice and doing what's right above their own individual existence. That has to be, because that's the most selfless thing that you could ever be. And those of you who struggle to live your life like that, you know I'm telling you the truth, because when you place justice above your personal well-being, then it raises your level of humanity to the point where you have the ability to see things that you never would have been able to see before, to do things that you never been able to do before, and you're no longer encumbered by these shackles, these psychological shackles that prevent you from being able to have the opportunity to reach your highest potential in life. That is the best feeling on earth. And I'm saying that because I have that feeling. And that's why I'm not passing judgment on anybody. Everybody's different. I'm just talking about a Jamu right now. That's the reason why I don't need anything else. I don't need alcohol. I don't need weed. I don't need any of that stuff. And if you need it, use it, do what you need to do with it. That's not my point. I don't care what you do. My point is that the reason why I know I don't need it is because I have that feeling that I know my life, if I continue to live it the way I'm struggling to live it, has value. And that gives me all I need to be able to rest comfortably within my skin. And if you're a true Christian, in a true sense, you would have that too. And if you don't have that, then it's because what you're purporting is not really what your faith should be about. And you should do the work to make sure that that faith lines up with that of Jesus Christ, where you and your entire life is based on living a life of justice and forward human progress, regardless of the consequences. So we want to thank you for joining us today. And we certainly want to invite you back next week, December 29th, Sunday, same time, same place, same platforms. We're going to be talking about the 66th year of the Cuban Revolution. And the focus is really going to be, we're moving into the 63rd year of the illegal U.S. criminal economic embargo against the socialist Cuban Revolution. And so we really want to talk about the embargo, not only the impacts that it has on the Cuban people, but the things the Cuban people are doing in spite of the embargo to support their revolution. So we want to be you want to be here to talk about that for sure, because the reality is that from John F. Kennedy, or really Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., Bill Clinton, George Bush II, whatever the hell his name was, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Donald Trump again, each and every one of those no good bastards supported and carried out the economic embargo against Cuba. And despite that, the Cuban people persevere. Despite all the negative and reactionary propaganda, a lot of it that a lot of you believe, the Cuban people persevere. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So please join us. The QR code in the upper left hand, you scan on that rather, you can get all of the other AAPRP programs. There's information on how to access them as well as this one. You can go to the Forward Ever shop. I just got a wonderful hoodie, Malcolm X, with Pan-African statements that he made doing his Pan-African work on it, and outstanding pictures of him and the masses of people in the Black Panther Party, all of that on the same hoodie. You're going to be spending your money. You should order that. and give it to people. You should order that as Kwanzaa gifts. Support independent, revolutionary African organizations. Stop talking about support Black business, and these businesses do nothing to support our people. Support independent, revolutionary African organizations. Support African businesses if they're doing something to contribute to our community, but we're doing work to contribute to our community. And if you don't know, it's just because you just don't want to know, because there's no argument that could be made that argues that we're not doing that. So support us. So go to the Forward Ever shop and do that. You'll get the link in that QR code. Support Hood Communist. It's a revolutionary Pan-African blog. Support it. Read the articles. Tell people about it. Do the work, you all. Help spread the word. And we want to invite you, those of you that are in the Northern California area or who are going to be in Northern California on February 1st, we're going to be having a community discussion on how those concerned in the African, quote unquote, Black community should build and respond. Everybody's welcome, but this will be a discussion around African people. So if you're not prepared or qualified to speak on that, and you're not African, then you're not going to have a voice at this event. So don't come thinking you can take up space. That is not going to happen. I guarantee you that's not going to happen. But everyone is welcome. We're going to have food there. So please spread the word about that. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. The website URL is at the bottom, aprp-intl.org. Do that. At the bottom right, the white and black QR code is for Burkina Books. We want to certainly invite you to support that project, become a monthly sponsor. That's work on the ground that's taking place in Burkina Faso that is being facilitated by the APRP. So do that. And then we want you to please continue to buy my $8 book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. But I'm going to tell you right now, while the Amazon workers are on strike, don't buy the book. If you don't have it now, don't buy it. Wait till they come off strike. Because, again, we are committed to principle. And I don't use the money that I get from the proceeds for anything other than financing the anti-fascist work that we do. But still, we want to support any workers that are on strike. So I'm telling you, now you tell me what capitalist business would tell you not to buy its product. But I'm telling you right now, we're revolutionaries. We're revolutionary Pan-Africanists. Don't buy my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. Do not buy it until the Amazon workers are not striking. Please. Forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your evening.